I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on the Spotlight Network, we're uncovering the compelling story behind The Realtor, a memoir by Banksy. This inspiring book takes you through her remarkable journey, navigating a strict narcissistic upbringing, the challenges of motherhood, and the competitive real estate industry. Packed with life lessons on self-care, resilience, and personal transformation, this is a story that will resonate with anyone seeking growth and empowerment. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight, and we ask viewers like you to support authors like her by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing her amazing book. The links are below this interview. Dawn, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Logan, for having me. Appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. This is a powerful book you have penned. Tell us how your upbringing shaped your life and your path in life.
Well, so as I started to kind of relook at, my upbringing, I realized how it was not quite as normal as I thought. I eventually became the oldest of many siblings, but I was the first and born to two parents, I think, that thought they were doing it better than their parents. As time rolled along, my father is a man, if you were to meet, everyone adores him. He's the kindest, most soft-spoken person. My mother, on the other hand, was a narcissist in all respects. She was at times often cruel, unkind. And I just thought that was normal. I just thought, well, we just don't necessarily have the same mother-daughter relationship that I see other people have, and that's fine. And then to add to that, we were raised in a very strict religious household as well. So I had that, but then also my mother's version of what that should look like. So, undisciplined children made her look, according to her, as not a good parent within the church and things like that. So it was just, we had a very narrow lane we had to grow up with. Now cut to that to when I was about 5 years old and my brother was 3. She disappeared out of our lives. She went from being a very strict religious parent to deciding she really did want actually a double life that no one really knew about. And all of a sudden, one day she was gone. So, my dad carried on with two small kids. And when I think back now as an adult, he was in his early 30s, taking care of two small children. And about a year went by, and I, came home from school, and, my new normal was becoming very normal. And I round the steps to the kitchen, and there she is holding a teddy bear. And so my dad had got her to come back home, but things shifted at that point. And I don't know if my father didn't notice or didn't want to notice. He had his family back together and so forth. And that became the journey of being raised by a woman who had, now I can reflect back now and realize she had a lot of issues and had a lot of it came from her child and so forth, but no one in her lifetime or my lifetime ever seemed to address it.
Yeah. In many ways, you'd been better off if she had stayed away, I guess.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yes. Well, it's interesting that you say that, because as time went on, more siblings came into the family.
Yeah.
And she had lasted another about 9 years, and then her double life took over again, and she left with 5 children at home again. And she left this very long letter to my father explaining, this isn't her fault, and she didn't want to do this, but this is what needs to happen. And, my dad handed it to me. Of course, he's very upset and so forth. And I just handed it back to him. And I said, well, let's get on with things then. We need to create a babysitting schedule and a food and meal schedule, and let's get on with it. She should never have come back to have how many more kids and now leave again. So it's interesting that you say that, because yes, in fact, it would have been better if she had stayed away.
And obviously, you had to deal with the cruel aspects of her and the disappointing aspects of her and the abandonment of her. But it also forced you to grow up fast, where you've got a number of siblings. you're older than they are, and you're basically now taking mom's role, right?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So I remember, I was 14 going on 15 when she left the second time. And my youngest brother had just turned 2.
Mm.
So, there were bathing every day, cooking dinner, doing the dishes, doing the laundry. I mean, my dad was actively part of it, but he was mourned her loss for years. He was, I can say now, a bit broken. So it took a toll. And so, a few years go by and I start to lash out a little bit. I stopped going to the church. I've had enough of that. It doesn't seem to be serving me well. In the meantime, my father actually remarried several years later, and she was a woman who never wanted children, but she married into a family with plenty of children,
Wow.
and it was very obvious. So what I did come to realize is my father seemed to be kind of ruled by the women in his life, the wives in his life. And it was her way or no way. And so on my 18th birthday, I was sat down at the dining room table and my father explained to me that if I continued to choose stay away from the religion, then I needed to go. And I said, okay. And I went to my room and I packed my bags. And he was shocked and, acted like he was confused. But I just said, well, you've been very clear. And, I want to be clear with you. I will not be returning to the religion. And anyways, off I went. And so I kind of entered the world as an 18-year-old with, who didn't have a lot of value in myself, didn't have a lot of self-respect, and really didn't have a lot of futuristic goals because between the religion and my mother, the way she had always preached, even though she had left home, was that you don't go to college, you don't strive for bigger things because we're literally waiting for the new world to come. So here I am off in the world. And then of course I, fall for the first guy who gives me any kind of attention. And I wind up on the other side of the country with no money, no family, no place to live, and in a very violent relationship.
Terrible, terrible. I mean, it's to be understood. I mean, particularly when you spell it out like this now, hindsight's always 2020, of course. But your mom was truly a troubled person, as you mentioned, and her influence on you was very impactful, of course, in a negative way, unfortunately. And, at 18 years old, leaving your home, with limited resources, of course, and limited professional choices as well, it's only natural in many ways that you pick up with the first person who wants to show interest in you, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So it was definitely a journey of, when I left that relationship, I actually came back to Ontario with a small child,
Yeah.
left the relationship and it just became a journey of building myself up little by little, making lots of mistakes along the way, but
Yeah.
but it was my journey.
Yeah. You had the power to leave the abusive relationship, which is great. What were some of the pivotal moments in your life that help you turn things around and get on a path where you were building towards happiness and you were building a better career as well?
Well, I think when you're raised the way I was, I mean, I think every parent, when they have a child, when they have their first child, you come into it saying, I want to do it better than my parents did. Even if you had great parents, you always want to, I want to do it better, bigger and better than my parents. I want to do all things right. I want to give her everything I didn't have. And she really became my focus and it fueled me to get the job, get work towards the career. So, I went back to school. I got my architectural drafting certificate, decided not to necessarily go into architecture, but I knew it would be something to do with homes and found my way to being a realtor because of that. In the meantime, I did marry and have 2 more children, and we were one big happy family for a long, long time until we weren't. And we had very different parenting styles. He was firmer, more strict. I was tried to be a little more lenient and talk and discuss things out more with the kids. And, amongst many other differences, we ended up deciding after 18 years to go our separate ways. But my kids became my focus. At that point, I was already in real estate and learning all the bumps and bruises that go along with that. And it's really kind of how my book started, because I started writing little stories about the things that happen in real estate that nobody would believe. They're just crazy, crazy, odd things. And I ended up along the way meeting someone who's now a good friend of mine about 6 years ago. He had lived in Hollywood. He was a writer, producer there for many, many years, and came back to buy a place in Ontario. And we're out house shopping, and he says, "Tell me what one of the craziest real estate stories that's ever happened to you." And so I told him the story, and his mouth was just hanging open. He says, "Oh, you got to write about this." And I said, "Well, I actually am. I'm doing little short stories." But then life takes over, and kids and family illnesses and divorce and all things. I found my way to a beautiful thing called therapy. And when I started talking and dissecting of, why do I make the decisions I make? How do I improve this, or how do I do this? My therapist even said, from strictly a therapeutical side of things, you should really be writing this down. But the other side of this is you really need to write a book about this. And I thought, well, okay, so a couple people now have told me this, so maybe I'll start writing, and then that's where I landed.
Amazing, amazing. A lot of people complain about their parents, complain about their moms. You have real reason to complain about your mom. It's unbelievable what she did to you and your family. And you've come a long, long way. Do you credit your child? Do you credit your children? Do you credit real estate for helping turn it all around? Are you at the place you want to be now? Are you happy now? Do you feel like you've kind of shaken off those chains from childhood that your mom might have shackled you with for a while?
I'm in a really, really great place. It took me a long time to get there. I kind of danced around my marriage, along the way of, don't ever argue, don't ruffle anyone's feathers, because when someone argues, someone always leaves. I didn't realize I was doing that till I went to therapy, and I went, wow, okay.
Yeah.
I'm starting to understand, why I do make certain decisions and so forth. So, but yeah, so I with time and with healing and with some therapy and just really talking things out, I'm glad to be in a time where we do talk more about women's stories and more about, what they go through as women that men don't go through because of our vulnerabilities, because of our strengths or lack thereof. Um, and it's just been a really, really great journey. And I feel whole, and I feel really, really good. And part of that has been writing this, because as I wrote it, I really started to actually um, forgive on some level, and really start to see my mother as just a person who was, you know, a woman before she was a wife, a little girl before she was a mother, and had her own terrible childhood, that she didn't talk a lot about, but she said enough that we knew it wasn't pleasant. And it really helped me find a softer space for her in the way I think about her.
Absolutely. Forgiving her, I think, is huge to your own recovery, because everybody really does the best that they can do. Like you said, she was broken in her way. Your dad was broken in his way. We're all broken in our own ways,
Right.
unfortunately. Somebody said to me one time, we're all running a race and we have backpacks on and there are bricks in it. Some have 20 bricks, some have 5 bricks, some have 1 brick, but we all have bricks in our backpack that we're running with. You had quite a few bricks thrown in yours. But this book is wonderful. It's so insightful. It really shows the evolution of your life. And I think it'll help other people with the challenges that they face. They might not be exactly like yours, but they might be similar. And I think you have shown a path to clarity and a path to being your best self. The name of the book is The Realtor. It is a memoir. It is an inspiring book that takes you through the author's remarkable journey navigating a strict narcissistic upbringing, the challenges of motherhood, and the competitive real estate industry. Dawn, thank you so much for joining me here today on Spotlight.
Thank you, Logan, for having me. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate your time. I appreciate your articulation on these issues and your eloquence as well. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.